Anyway, it's great to have you here. First, I would like to, for those that listen, to get to know you better, because we have already a little bit of a chit chat, very interesting. But who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So I'm founder and CEO of Golden Tax Relief and IRS Trouble Solvers. We help people if they have tax problems or before they have a tax problem through planning, proactive planning.
Nice. So we talked about tax problems, and while we were preparing, you just brought up some stuff. I was like, what? So where does the tax problem start that we need actually to call for rescue, so to speak?
I believe it starts at $50,000 or more, because, as an individual, if you owe $50,000 or more, that's where the IRS can actually decertify your passport. So that means that while they don't take it away immediately, if you go to renew it, they will not renew it. And it becomes a problem because if you go abroad and you lose your passport, or if it gets stolen, then it becomes an act of Congress to come home, which could be problematic if you need to come home.
Act of Congress.
Absolutely.
That sounds super serious. At $50K, so that's really low, actually, if you think about it.
That's right.
So now, once that happens, like, what is the course of action? Because what is it that people need to know? What do people need to realize? What is like things that over the years of helping people, you noticed a pattern that people need to be aware of,
right?
So that they can be guided in the right direction.
Absolutely. So there are some things that you can do to prevent it, number one. And if you get into a problem, no action is a decision. And that's what we don't want to do. The IRS thinks that everybody is not going to act. So because they think that you're guilty by default, and if you don't do something to let the IRS know your position, then ultimately they're going to become more aggressive. Sticking your head in the sand is not the thing you should do. Throwing those letters off, not opening the letters and throwing them in the back of your cabinet is not what you should do. And so many people come to us that are just so afraid of opening the letters and dealing with the problem. The first step is actually an investigation to say, okay, where exactly are you in the process?
When people come to you, do you feel like people maybe have a measure of shame or something that prevents them to actually make that step?
Absolutely. I mean, the thought is that bad things happen to great people.
IRS problem sounds like STD.
Right?
Like kind of sort of.
You don't want people to know about it. It is sort of shameful because, I didn't take care of my obligations. I don't want my friends and family to know about it. And there is some shame that goes along with it. But, the thought is bad things happen to good people all the time. Typically, my normal client has had some bad circumstances happen in their life. And this is one of the things that happened as a result of a bad circumstance. A divorce, a loss of a spouse or a child, a peril like a hurricane or something like that happened, and they're trying to pick up their life, and the last thing they want to worry about is paying Uncle Sam.
Indeed.
And the thing is, I come into it with a judgment-free zone. So I'm not going to judge you where you are. It's not about where you are. It's about how can we fix the situation to get you to a place where you can actually breathe, where you can have some peace of mind, and you not worry about, is the IRS going to drain my funds in my bank account today?
Yeah, because it's interesting. I think the IRS brings wagons and wagons of myths, of speculations, of imaginary consequences and things like that. Some of them are probably true, but not all of them at once. And yet maybe the minds of people kind of start making the worst case scenarios.
That's right. I mean, the IRS is not going to come and take your home tomorrow if you owe some money. They're not going to drain your bank accounts and take all of the funds that you have in your bank accounts immediately. There's a process. And typically, if you don't respond in the process, the IRS will get more
It
and more
accelerates
and
the
more aggressive.
process if you don't
That's right.
communicate.
That's right. But if you let them know, okay, this is where I am and this is what I want to attempt to do, depending on how much you owe, you have to jump over some hurdles to get to an end result. But you can still get to an end result. I have clients right now that owe millions of dollars to the IRS, and the IRS is not coming after them anymore because we've got them set into a plan.
So talking about, that's a good example. Can you share with us maybe that David versus Goliath type of scenario that you have certainly encountered? Because, I mean, definitely the IRS is the Goliath. It's like the big, spooky 8,000 million pound gorilla looking at you.
Absolutely they are. I mean, I call them a super creditor because they can go in and seize assets, and there's not much you can do about it if you never respond, right? So for me, personally, the IRS came after me as a very young professional. And my client owed $171,000 in tax. The revenue officer said, Ben, I think you owe this. And she assigned and said, Ben, you owe this. And okay, how, Ben, are you going to pay for it? This is how much money you have in the bank personally. This is how much your house is worth. This is how you have some land. This is how much the land is worth. This is how much your retirement is, how much in your retirement account. This is how much is on the bank account that you have over here. And I was like, well, that's not even my bank account. She's like, your name is on it. We're going to take it. So she said, you have an ability to pay this $171,000. I'm a young professional. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. And the first thing that goes in my mind is, what am I going to do? I failed my family. I can't provide. I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. I'm going to take everything. That's the first thing that jumped in my mind. But, you know,
and that hits to the core. I mean,
absolutely. As
I'm talking to you, I can see this, the emotion comes back
as
up.
As a man, you know, I mean, the provider for your family. I mean, it hits you unlike anything else. So literally, that night ate supper with my wife and the kids. Put the kids down. I said, babe, I've got to go to work. Went back up to work, literally. And I have a master's in tax, and I grabbed one of my books. It was a procedural book. I said, something's wrong. This just is not right. So about 3 a.m, I found where the IRS made a mistake procedurally. And my next thought was, other than, you know, hallelujah, praise the Lord, you know,
cartwheels,
freedom, you know. So the other thing that I thought was, okay, how can I strategically prevent the IRS from trying to cover up the mistake they made against me?
Oh.
So
how
can I
strategically? Because they're not going to admit that.
No.
They're going to do their best to not
They're going to
admit.
do their very best to never admit wrongdoing.
Yeah. So therefore, now you saw, like playing chess here, you say, okay, we found this out, but they're going to try to like deny this.
That's right.
So how can I prevent that they actually find a way to cover it up?
That's exactly right. And I thought that they would try to cover it up.
Yeah.
So the next day, I called the revenue officer and talked to her, and she's like, I told her, I was like, I need your manager's name and number. She didn't want to give it to me. She finally did. I said, listen, if you don't want to give it to me, you don't have to, but I'm going to go to this other unit in the IRS and I'm going to get it from them. So you might as well just give it to me. So she did. Called her manager. This was back 25 years ago when you could actually call the IRS
and talk to somebody.
You could talk to a person. Called her manager, and I talked to her, and I got her manager's territory manager. So my thought is that one person can hide it, 2 people can conspire, but 3 people is a bond that will not happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the manager's manager involved, which is the territory manager. And then I also got TIGDA, which is the enforcement division in the IRS against the revenue officers and revenue agents. I got them involved. When wrongdoing is has ensued, I got them involved as well. And so there was no sweeping it under the rug. Ultimately, for me, I was able to prove that she had invaded my privacy, looked into me personally when she didn't have the right, as well as she abused her power, authority, and discretion procedurally because she didn't follow through with the correct interviews and things like that, the process. And so because of that, ultimately the revenue officer was never able to work a case with me again, and she was given 30 days off without pay. And that's pretty big for a government employee.
I was about to say, that's rare. I mean, rare. It's big. So with this experience, has this created some sort of Robin Hood like persona in Ben, and Ben Golden put on a cape and said, you know what, I'm going to come to the rescue of all those fellow citizens that are being used and abused?
You know, you would think that. And I think there's a little bit in there, but, you know, I'm going to get real. I'm going to advocate like no one will ever advocate for someone else, because you're a little man that is been put into place by the IRS, and the IRS thinks they have you exactly where they want you. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to advocate for a client because I know the feeling of the IRS attempting to bully somebody.
Yeah, because you were there.
And I was there.
I mean, you know, it's funny, like you say 25 years ago, I'm looking at you right now as I speak, and I can see in your eyes still like that emotion coming back, like PTSD
there.
of it.
Yeah. No, there's a fire there, because I remember thinking, you know, I've got a 1-year-old little baby girl. What am I going to do if we're going to have to start all over? I mean, how can I really felt that emotion of how can I be a great parent to my little baby girl
when you
if we have to completely start if we have to completely start all over. And I was like, I didn't want to have to do that, and I didn't think it was fair. Now we know that taxes aren't fair, and there's a lot of laws out there that aren't fair, but
that's on top of it. That's what even worse.
That's exactly right.
It's like you kind of make peace with the fact that it's not fair, but this is what we need to do. But on top of it, when they create something that is not real, and then they invade the privacy, like you mentioned, this is a little bit like somebody breaking into your house.
And they made it personal.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I see that.
So I've never really thought of myself as sort of the Robin Hood-esque.
Now, do you think about it this way? Do you mean to get
maybe so, absolutely. Maybe so, because, you know, it is sort of like the David and Goliath, and it's like I said on stage the other day. You know, it's not only enough that David slung the stone and struck him down. He took his sword
and chopped it off
and finished it.
Yeah.
So, you know, clients need finality, and they need to know, okay, this is my stopping part, and I now have a new starting point.
And there's also something that is, I think, critical, is the fact that you went through this and that you talk with clearly. You're emotionally involved in that whole process for yourself, and therefore for your clients. It's very good for them to understand they come to somebody that went through this, understands them, and there's no judgment, in the sense that, you know, well, because you started a conversation at 50,000, you should start being careful, you know, and go seek professional help.
Right.
But then you mentioned they have clients that go into millions, so the range is dramatic, is huge, and from the get-go you don't welcome anyone with a sense of judgment or so, you know, like with a little bit of attitude or something.
Right.
That can be a great relief, because on the other line, when you do talk to the IRS or somebody, very often you have somebody that feel empowered to have that attitude.
Well, I mean, you have to realize that IRS agents are people too, and they're doing a job to advocate for the United States government as strongly as they possibly can, and that's really their job. And our job is to say, wait, hold on. This is why you can't, and this is the rule. So there's something called an Internal Revenue Manual. So in my experience, I've learned that I was able to find a procedure that the IRS missed. So the Internal Revenue Manual is the guideline by which the IRS must operate. And if they break their own guidelines, there's problems.
Okay.
So my job is to know the guidelines as better or better than the people that are at the IRS. It's sort of like a playbook,
Yeah.
you know? My job is to know their plays and how do I negotiate around them.
Within the boundaries of
exactly. It's like a chess game or a football game. You can navigate based off of either what the opponent does on defense or on offense.
And the team players you have on your team, which is your clients that come to you with their, weaknesses, their problems, their limitations, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Love it.